Zimbabweans are now wondering, waiting, watching. Is he coming back? When is he coming back? When he does come back, or if he comes back, what role is he going to play? We know some Zimbabweans who supported him saw him as the heir apparent, the one who would take over from President Mugabe one day. In the ruling ZANU-PF party, in terms of hierarchy, he is the most senior member, and he has a lot of support, being a former war veteran. So all eyes on Emmerson Mnangagwa. A lot of Zimbabweans are waiting to see what happens next. When he left, he told Zimbabweans he would return soon to lead them, and people are waiting to see what he meant when he said that.
Well, thank you so much, Hara Mutasa, bringing us all the latest from Harare. Bernard Smith now looks at the political background that's led to this intervention.
The stakes have just got higher in the battle for who will succeed Zimbabwe's 93-year-old president. Last week, Robert Mugabe fired his deputy. As he spoke, his politically ambitious wife, Grace, was by his side. President Mugabe said Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa had started consulting witch doctors to find out when I was going to die. The news was delivered to a crowd of supporters from the youth wing of the ruling party ZANU-PF. The youth wing is loyal to Mrs. Mugabe. She's the most prominent face of a faction called G40. But the man pushed aside was honing his political skills when Grace Mugabe was still in high school. Mnangagwa is nicknamed the Crocodile for his ability to survive. He's closely aligned with the military and a veteran of the struggle against British rule. That counts for a lot in Zimbabwe.
Grace Mugabe was probably learning very quickly, but not fast enough. You know, she would lose her temper and she would be screaming at these people. This goes back to 2014 when Joyce Mujuru, who was vice president then, was dumped. And Emmerson Mnangagwa, the guy who was dumped but is now back, was with that, you know, with Grace. So these are very, very fluid, shifting factional fights going on.
The military's intervention comes as Zimbabwe faces another economic crisis. People sleep outside banks because there's a chronic shortage of currency. They want to be first in line for restricted access to their money. Unemployment is estimated to be between 60 and 90%.
This has created an economic collapse because the last time that Mugabe was really under threat was towards the end of the 1990s. And then the so-called war veterans pushed him into a corner and he said, well, I need your support. Go and get 20% of the land and I'll go for you. And, you know, that created an economic crisis.
As Robert Mugabe has aged, the struggle for his successor has intensified. But all the while, everyone has been careful to publicly show deference to a president who is held in high regard by most Zimbabweans. Grace Mugabe and her G40 faction does not command the same respect. Now that the army has stepped in, that faction may have gambled and lost. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera.
We can now speak to Temba Mliswa, an independent Zimbabwean politician who's a former member of the ruling ZANU-PF party, joins us live via Skype from the capital, Harare. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. First of all, how would you describe the situation in the country right now?
It is, for some, it's very bad news outside Zimbabwe, but for those in Zimbabwe, it's very good news because this is a timely intervention by the military, and it is quite constitutional. As a member of parliament, 212 section of the constitution clearly talks about the role of the military in terms of being the ones to protect the national security of the country and the interests of the country and the territorial integrity of Zimbabwe. They are within their ambit to do what they are doing because there was instability in the country as a result of the First Lady usurping powers from the president. The people of Zimbabwe elected Mugabe as the president, not Grace Mugabe.
And so then can I ask you, does that mean you think that this is a temporary intervention by the military and that they will essentially hand power over to Emmerson Mnangagwa?
There's absolutely nothing, like I say, the military are there to restore order in the ruling party. You've got to understand the history of ZANU-PF. It's born out of the liberation struggle. The founding principles of the struggle are imperative as Zimbabweans. Some of the commanders in the army were commanders in the liberation struggle. You've got the war veterans involved as well. So they've always been part of ZANU-PF. Whoever thought they were not part of ZANU-PF was certainly naive because they are the ones who brought about the liberation struggle and they're the ones who led the freedom we have today. So how can you divorce them from ZANU-PF? They have a right to ZANU-PF. They remain the trustees of ZANU-PF, and they have a right to intervene once they believe that the Revolutionary Party is being hijacked, is being infiltrated. The aspect of corruption is critical. Just for information,
Mliswa.
Minister Chombo's house, which
Mliswa.
was invaded and he was arrested, he had $10 million cash on him. And
Okay, so can I just ask you, is Emmerson Mnangagwa back in the country now?
Whether he's in the country or not, the mistake that President Mugabe did was to fire one of his loyalists, the last man standing in ZANU-PF, who defended him, who took all the flack for him. And suddenly, because he wants to elevate his wife to being vice president, then to being president after 2018, he then decided to discard the loyal Emmerson Mnangagwa.
So is it your anticipation then that Mnangagwa will essentially take over now when he is back?
There is absolutely no debate there. Emmerson Mnangagwa is popular, and the way Grace Mugabe went about attacking Mnangagwa, he gained more supporters, he gained more sympathizers, and he controlled 9 out of the 10 provincial provinces in Zimbabwe. As a result, he was seen as a threat. That is the reason why the president...
But can I put one point to you, and I understand what you're saying, and you mentioned the problems around Grace Mugabe, but actually many people might say that Emmerson Mnangagwa, because he is very much part of the political establishment that has been built by President Robert Mugabe, he too stands accused of taking part in a crackdown on political rivals. The man at the top might be about to change, but that doesn't guarantee that it will result in a better future for the people there.
Emmerson Mnangagwa is a lawyer by profession. He has a right to uphold the rule of law. He's a business person. He's somebody, if you know him very well, he's very accommodating. At the same time, there's the tribal aspect. You cannot have the Zezurus having the monopoly of the presidency. He's from the Karanga. And I'm glad to say that the military, the defense forces have gone beyond tribalism. Because Chiwenga is Zezuru, but he sees that Zimbabwe is safer in a democratic process, even within ZANU-PF. And the extraordinary Congress must choose whoever they believe must lead them. And he knew very well that Mnangagwa was supposed to be in 2004, but Mugabe, being the king of Machiavelli, then used the gender card and allowed Maimjuru to come in. Yet Mnangagwa would have won the election. 2014, he kicked out Maimjuru and brought in Mnangagwa. Each time that he feels threatened, he is quick to expel people, but he's not brave enough.
Mr. Mliswa, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us and to give us a sense of how things are playing out there in the capital, Harare. Temba Mliswa, an independent Zimbabwean politician. Thank you. Well, developments in Harare are being watched closely by the large number of Zimbabweans in South Africa. Tanya Page has reaction from there.
Johannesburg is the bustling economic hub of South Africa, and that's why it's such a magnet for so many Zimbabweans who come here to work. For people arriving into the country, this is one of their first stops. This is the bus station in Joburg, and we've been talking to people here, many of whom think what's happening in Harare at the moment is a positive.
The situation now in Zimbabwe is now good, just because since the army take power over Zimbabwe, and now the president is now off from the seat, we are nearly happy, just because it's now 8 years here in South Africa, trying to sell these 2 rand fruits so that I can feed my family.
I hope things to change in Zimbabwe, so that we can have the opportunity to stay in our country. We are tired of being called Makwerekwere all over the world. We Zimbabweans, we are all over the world because our country, we don't enjoy to stay in our country anyway.
Some of the people here don't want to talk on camera. They're a bit scared because they are about to go home to Zimbabwe. But other people feel a bit more comfortable being critical.
We must, as soon as possible, return to constitutionalism so that the people of Zimbabwe elect a government of their choice.
Those guys, they are same. They are all thieves. Because as I'm talking right now, it's just like a snake coming out, going another snake.
Any dramatic change in Zimbabwe will have a big impact on all its neighbours. That's why there is generally a sense of unease as people wait to see what happens next.
You're watching the News Hour from London, still to come.